and this meeting will be recorded.
We're live.
Jean, we are good to go.
Good evening and welcome to JJC Talks, a live streamed artist talk sponsored by the Joshua Johnson Council, a member affiliate organization at the Baltimore Museum of Art. And we're so glad you're all here. Our members are here with us on Zoom, and our public, we're so glad you're here tonight as we have a special guest, Schroeder Cherry. I'm going to turn this over now to our Vice President, Rose McNeil. I'm Jean Thompson, and I'm the president of JJC this season. Thank you for coming tonight. Rose?
Good evening. Hi, I'm Rose McNeil, and I would like to welcome you to the Joshua Johnson Council's JJC Talks. JJC is thrilled that you took time out of your busy schedule to hear tonight's guests. This live stream talk will broaden your knowledge and experience of contemporary art and art made by African Americans and African American descent. As you already know, the Joshua Johnson Council is one of the oldest African American museum support groups in the U.S., and we are currently celebrating our 37th year, and in November, it'll be our 38th year. The JJC is named after 18th century African American portrait painter Joshua Johnson, who lived and worked in Maryland. It is our mission to forge meaningful connections between Baltimore's African American communities and the Baltimore Museum of Art by promoting and highlighting the achievements of African American artists. The JJC membership offers a wide range of opportunities for active participation within a network of friends and colleagues dedicated to art. We invite you to become a member of our affiliate group by joining or renewing both the Baltimore Museum of Art membership and the Joshua Johnson Council membership. The BMA offers a number of ways for art lovers to become more involved in the museum's work. To join the Baltimore Museum of Art, just call 443-573-1800 or visit the membership at artbma.org. Also, to join or renew the JJC, which is Joshua Johnson Council, please call 443-573-1789 to join, or you can do it online at artbma.org / Joshua Johnson Council. But if you prefer to send a check, please make it payable to the Baltimore Museum of Art and write Joshua Johnson Council on the subject line. Mail checks to Dave Issa, who is our Director of Public Engagement, and that would be mailed to the Baltimore Museum of Art, 10 Art Drive, Baltimore, Maryland, 21211. Please join us, and we have a slew of activities that you can get involved with, and your support helps us to foster all of the programs that we have involved. So please enjoy what we have to offer tonight, and hopefully you will join us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you, folks, for joining us this evening. I'm Dave Issa. I'm Director of Public Engagement here at the BMA, and I have the pleasure of introducing Schroeder Cherry with us this evening, who, if you are a maker, museum visitor, artist, if you're invested in any creative field over the last several years, you have likely seen Schroeder's work in a lot of different forms and ways. I'm going to keep it kind of short and not regurgitate his very lengthy bio and get to the good stuff so we can hear from Schroeder directly. But thank you for being here. everyone viewing right now. As we go through the presentation, if you have any questions for the artist, put them into the comments and we will do a live Q&A at the end of this. To you, Schroeder, thank you.
Thank you, David, and thank you everyone for having me. It's a joy to be here with JJC. David was very adept at helping me to make this transition into the share screen, so I'm going to do that now. Is the screen showing up for you guys?
Yep.
Okay.
And then go to your slideshow button, Schroeder.
Right. Slideshow.
If you go up top to the right.
Oh, that slideshow. Yes. From beginning. Okay. It was. Are we good? Do you guys see the screen that says Schroeder Cherry?
Yes, sir.
All right, we're good to go. All right, well, first, again, thank you for having me. What I'd like to do is to talk about my artistic career. It's a triune divided between my being a visual artist, a museum educator, and a puppeteer. So that's what I would like to share with you today. Starting with our first slide. I want to start with this slide because it goes back to my childhood. I was an arts kid as a child and I played with puppets. This is a puppet I had from 2nd and 3rd grade. He's in disrepair right now, but he's holding on. I played with marionettes. I also drew and scribbled a lot. My mom brought home papers from the office, the white paper with the blue lines on it, and I was scribbled on those. I was very fortunate to go to an arts high school in Washington, D.C. McKinley Tech High School was a magnet school, and also participated in a program called Workshop for Careers in the Arts, which was started by Peggy Cooper and Mike Malone. Peggy was at George Washington University and Mike Malone was at Howard. They really exposed me to different art forms. The program was designed to introduce young kids to visual arts, performing arts, music, dance, and theater. Although I was a visual artist, I hung out with the performing arts kids because I just thought they were so exciting. So that's where I hung out. This is a painting I did in 10th grade. This is my very first painting on canvas, and it is still in the family home in Washington, D.C. I consider myself a painter for most of the time. Didn't play with puppets again until I got to college. In my freshman year of college, I had Martin Puryear, who's a sculptor, as a professor. And he was making these very elaborate kites. And I thought, well, why are you making kites? And he said, that was my childhood passion. I want to know how I respond to it now. And I thought, that's an interesting approach. My passion was puppets. Let me see how I feel about puppets as a college student. I was introduced to a puppet artist in Chicago. So during the summer of my junior and senior year, I went to Chicago, and during the daytime, I was working at the Art Institute of Chicago, developing programs for high school kids. And in the evening, I would go to Gary Jones's studio in the evening and study puppetry with him. So this is me in my college years. I took puppets with me after I left Chicago and ended up in various museums. At Smithsonian Institution's Anacostia Museum, I took the puppets, I worked with kids there. This is the Anacostia Puppet Theater. This is a Bunraku puppet, large sculpture. I tried using storytelling in the galleries. This particular puppet told African folk tales. Smithsonian Institution traveling exhibits had an exhibit of 360 music sheet covers, and they wanted something to make it inviting to the community. So we came up with this notion of an old musician whose name was Ragtime Rousseau, who would talk about his experiences as a musician and knowing all these other musicians over time. So Ragtime Rousseau traveled with that exhibit for a couple of years. At Studio Museum in Harlem, again, we got a puppet theater. So here we have Ed Koch, who's the mayor of New York City at that time, coming in. He's playing around with us. Ms. Lily was a puppet who actually was developed when I was director of education at the Baltimore Museum of Art. I wanted to create a space where adults could feel safe to play. So we came up with this character. Ms. Lily is a docent, a bona fide docent. She has an identity card, which you'll see a little later. And she gave tours only to adults. In the 80s, I became interested in African puppetry. So I would typically go to a major city in Africa. This is Dakar. I would find a hotel, drop my bags, and then go into the countryside looking for puppets. What I found very exciting is the different variety of puppetry in Africa and the way that they performed. This is a fishing village in Mali. And in this particular performance, the visitors would line up on the banks, they're the audience, but the show itself took place in the canoe. This is a close-up of the canoe. This figure here is actually the puppet stage. So the puppet performers would be here under the raffia. This is the stage, and the puppets themselves would appear in the back of this animal. This is an example of a puppet I brought back from Mali. It's animated. This figure has arms and a drum, a pounding that go up and down when you activate it. So there was a part where I was actually using African puppets in my storytelling. This ram is from Senegal. The head, exquisite piece, made out of wood. The fleece of the ram is made out of cowrie shells. Eye is a mirror, and this is fabric. This puppet is from Mali. One of the things about African puppetry is that it's not like European puppetry where you have a beginning, a middle, and an end with one storyline. Typically, African shows are a combination of musicians, drummers, dancers, singers, and maybe a storyteller, and you have a bunch of puppets bouncing around. This is an example of a puppet under a masked performer. So the puppet is very tall, and again, these shows usually take place outdoors. So you've got the puppeteer here who's completely clothed, but the puppet itself is up top. This puppet is also from Mali. He's about 5 foot tall. He's made out of wood. And I think that at one point he was probably attached to a horse because of the way that his legs were straddled here. One of my creations inspired by African puppetry. So I used wood, raffia for the wings, and in the particular story, the bird learns to wear different colors. So I draped some kente cloth over the wings. I currently perform puppets from time to time with Arts for Learning, formerly known as Maryland for the Arts. And sometimes we perform inside schools. The show that is touring with this program now is called Underground Railroad, Not a Subway. And that was a show that was developed in 1997. I thought it was going to last for a couple of months, but it's ongoing now. And it was inspired by a conversation I had with some middle school students in New York. We were talking about the Underground Railroad. And I said, you guys know what the Underground Railroad was, right? And one high school student looked me dead in the eye and said, yeah, man, everybody knows that was a subway that took Black people to freedom. And I thought, okay, so there's a lesson here. But for him, it probably made sense because in his mind, slavery was more than 100 years ago. New York subway was more than 100 years ago. So he just put 2 and 2 together. So I came up with a show called Underground Railroad, Not a Subway. And this is, in that show, this is a slave catcher. Part of the show is performed from behind the screen, and in other parts of the show, I'm actually in full view. I use a variety of puppets, rod puppets, hand puppets, and these are wooden cutouts. We sometimes perform outdoors, and this is the Oakley home in Maryland. and it's in a historic house, and it was actually very magical for me to perform here with this particular show in front of a real cabin. This is a slave woman and an enslaved woman and a little boy who actually decides to run away from slavery. And this is the outdoor. Tuskegee Airmen was a show that we developed using a puppet talking about Tuskegee Airmen at the National Air and Space Museum. We weren't quite sure what the audience age was going to be and learned at the last minute that many of them probably were going to be very, very young. So we started off with a puppet who would teach the letter T and grew to Tuskegee. Here, the puppet Tevin, whose name begins with T, is talking to some real Tuskegee Airmen. They were good sports going on with this show with a puppet. Here's an example of a rod puppet. This is Jamal. This is Ms. Lily, and this is her BMA docent identification card. Ms. Lily actually still gives tours. Recently, she gave a tour at the National Museum of African American History and Culture down in Washington, D.C. The museum wanted to highlight 6 items that were recently acquired to their collection. So here is a shot of her talking to an audience about a shawl owned by Harriet Tubman that was given to her by Queen Elizabeth. And this was a walking tour. She actually walked from gallery to gallery looking at different objects. In this shot, she's talking about a Bible that belonged to Nat Turner. Miss Lily also gets time to play. So from time to time, we'll do puppet slams. And here she's doing a song called, If I Can't Sit on It, I Will. If I can't sell it, I will sit down upon it. It's a kind of, racy jazz blues song. I wanted to share with you a clip of one of the puppets. Well, actually, these are 3 puppets. You're going to see Cordell, Smooth Earl, and Maya Opinion. When COVID hit, I started, like many other people, experimenting with Zoom. And so in this, I'm holding a camera in one hand and holding the puppets in the other. So let's try it.
Hi, I'm Cordell, and today we're going to talk about, hey Cordell! Yeah, we're making a video here, Smooth Earl. We need to talk about Black History Month, because it's Black History Month. We're going to do that now. All right. That'll be smooth. In my opinion, Black history deserves more than 1 month. It's like good cheer. You don't wait for a holiday to spread good cheer. Good cheer should be spread all year round. That's just my opinion. And while we're on the matter, could we please include someone other than Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., and Malcolm X? If you don't know these names by now, well, Google them. And I guess that's why we have Black History Month, so you can catch up. That's just my opinion. All right. I got a name, Matthew Cherry. Who is that? Matthew Cherry was born in Washington, D.C. in 1835, and he was the one who developed the tricycle. That's right. He put on 3 wheels on a tricycle, and that was patented by him in the 1800s. You know what else? He also designed the fender for trolley cars because trolley cars were crashing into each other. So he designed the fender to protect them from collision and expensive repairs. And that's the same type of thing we use today on cars. We call them bumpers. Matthew Cherry, 1835, born in Washington, D.C. Smooth. Happy Black History Month, y'all.
So that's an example of the clip we were playing with during COVID. These other shots are some shots taken from recent puppet slams where a bunch of puppeteers will show up and we have about 5 to 7 minutes on stage. In this show, Juanita is singing the song Guess Who I Saw Today by Nancy Wilson to Newsy Nate. 3 other characters, DeAndre, Mr. Zeke, and Smooth Earl, who you just met. These puppets are made out of wood and fabric. The hands and mouths, the hands and heads are made out of plastic wood. The bodies are soft sculpture. Going on to the painting, as I said earlier, I started off painting on canvas and I was inspired by travels. This is from my trips to Haiti very early on. I reached a point when I was working on canvas where I was just abusing the canvas. I was cutting and sewing and stitching and burning the canvas, and I needed a stronger foundation. This is a collage piece. When I decided to go to a stronger foundation, I discovered that wood was really what worked for me. So this is an example of an early wood piece. This is from the Gospel series. I tend to work in series. Around 2014, I had a hip issue and I was not able to do things the way I normally do. I couldn't stand or lift or bend over easily, but I could sit for short periods of time when I could sketch. And this is when I decided, well, maybe I'll just try portraits. So I started off with members of my family, and I limited myself to just a sketchbook and a number 2 pencil. I would ask people if I could just take their picture and then sketch from a photograph. I ended up filling up a bunch of sketchbooks. Each sketchbook had 100 pictures in it. By the time I healed, I got so involved in doing the sketches, I was still interested in doing faces. So I started asking strangers, sometimes someone who I met at an artist retreat. When COVID hit, people started wearing masks. And I thought, well, I can't see the face, but this is an opportunity for a new series. So I started the Mask On, Mask Off series. I would ask people if I could take their picture with the mask on, the mask off, and then I would work from that. This is at a time where the whole country was struggling with having to wear masks. I think I ran into this woman at a jazz concert on the lawn at Silburn. Someone you might know, an artist in Baltimore. This is a stranger. I recently had an exhibit at Stevenson University, and the curator there, Laura Rubling, decided to post a number of portraits. So I gave 2 sketchbooks to the students, and they made the selection, and they posted 187 portraits on the wall from mask on, mask off. This is a wall shot with the puppets in the foreground. The more recent series I've been working on is the Barbershop Series, and that began on a dare. I was shaving my head in a gym, and a guy came up behind me and said, "What do you know about shaving heads?" I said, "Well, I shave my head every other day. Who are you?" It turns out that he is a barber. He owns a barbershop here in Baltimore, and I had wanted to do something in a barbershop. So I asked him if I could come in and sit in the shop and make some sketches, and he allowed me to do that. So I came in, did some sketches, and a number of these sketches ended up as paintings. These are pieces on wood, acrylic on wood with mixed media. This is the barber himself, Mr. Ray, and there's a small painting up on the wall. That was his piece. I got posted right above some other Black historic people. I spent a number of weeks in his barbershop and realized that most of my paintings were coming from his shop. So eventually I wanted to branch out and went to some other shops around Baltimore and in the DC area. These are all mixed media on wood. I insert keys, locks, there are mirror shards. Keys to me represent tools of access. You can either close something up or open it up, depending on what you have. Locks are the same. Sometimes you need a key to the lock, sometimes you need a combination for the lock. And keys and buttons and locks have become part of the materials that I use. They take on a different connotation with every piece. When I did some research on barbershops in America, I learned that for Black barbers, barbering became a profession during the colonial period when white men of means wanted to emulate European aristocracy. They needed to have what they called a man in waiting. So they would allow an enslaved man to shave their face and cut their hair. Eventually, enslaved Black men made that into a profession. And you have what grew to be the barbershop profession. Every barbershop has its own distinct qualities, but there are some commonalities. They all have mirrors, they all have seats for the patrons when they're getting their hair cut or while they're waiting. This one had a pool table. This particular barber actually is well known in the Baltimore community, Troy Staten. His son acquired it for his dad as a surprise gift. The current series that I'm working on is called Future Voters, and this is inspired by the voter suppression efforts that have been going on since 2020. I decided to focus on young people who are experiencing these voter suppression efforts, but not understanding what they actually are. But when they become of voting age, they'll probably reflect on those experiences, and it may have some impact on how they vote. Again, keys and locks are prominent in this series. I get some inspiration from outrageous things such as laws being passed that don't allow you to serve water while you're standing in line to vote, or bills that were passed that challenged churches being able to transport people to polling places. Sign language also appears in my works, and that was the result of my childhood. When I was a kid, I was in daycare with a deaf boy, and I recently began reflecting on what that actually meant, because Billy couldn't talk or hear, but we played together. So what is it that we did? And I just realized that we can be surrounded by people who are hearing impaired, and we don't know it unless they reveal themselves. This piece actually reflects on an historic episode where in the 50s and 60s, Black people were challenged to count the number of guess the number of jelly beans in a jar in order to be able to vote. So this is called How Many Jelly Beans? This is more contemporary. And I'm now starting to insert more text from the media that talks about something recent that relates to a voter suppression effort. This is Climb. This is H2O, water. I'd like to close out by showing some slides of my current work. I am a curator at JELMA, the James E. Lewis Museum of Art at Morgan State University. So in this capacity, I have an opportunity to work with other artists, and I make some decisions about what goes on view or comes into the collection, what goes into the galleries. Here we have an installation of Ethiopian art. We've also recently started what I call the Guest Artist Corner, and this is literally a corner measuring 8 foot by 10 foot wide, and the artists have a chance to use that space. It allows me to invite regional artists in and to expose them to our community. First guest artist was Ernest Shaw. The next artist was Rams Brizueno, who is also from Baltimore. He's a collage artist. The current artist is Alma Roberts, and she's up now. She'll be up until December 9. She will be followed by Eliseo Rosario, who is a photographer who does nature shots. And this is my final slide. The show that's up now, and I hope that you'll get a chance to come by, is the African American Quilters of Baltimore. The title is United Through Thread, a Baltimore-themed quilt journey. This show will be up until December 9. And that concludes my slide presentation.
Thank you for that, Schroeder. You've got quite a body of work. So there is a question in the chat, and the first one from Deborah says, do you still create angels? I didn't see any angels, but so let's talk about that. What is that?
I do, yeah, I have works that I keep coming back to. They're what I call the nexus pieces, and the angel series are currently being used. They use Old Bay cans. So I take an Old Bay can and I put wings on it and a torso with a halo, and yes, so they are ongoing.
So obviously Deborah has some insight that we don't have about your work there.
They used to do clocks.
Okay.
I have the angel clock.
Actually, and it's interesting that you mentioned that, because on the easel right now, I have a clock. It's a large piece. It's from the Future Voters, but there is a pendulum that swings back and forth. It's been a while since I've actually included a clock in the piece, but yeah, that's on the workbench right now.
Okay.
A good
Thank
question.
Very good. There's also another question from Dave. Can you talk a little bit more about the way you use corners on the wood panel pieces? I was going to ask that question. That was one of my questions too, are the corners. Talk about what's that process.
I have two friends who are gallerists, Terry Fleckenstein and Brian Truax. They own galleries and they get these corner samples. They're beautifully crafted, but they throw them away because they don't use them. I thought, these pieces are just too beautiful to throw away. They've got to have some good use. So they've become parts of my work. I used to be really careful about how I position them, but now I have so many, I'll just cut and scrape and just demolish them and turn them into something else with the artworks. But with the pieces, what has come to my mind in the studio is, whenever you talk about a phase of your life, when you're in your teens, when you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, 70s, 80s, 90s, the way you frame your life chapter looks a certain way, but it changes throughout your life. And as long as you're alive, your story is never completely framed. So I've got these fragments that appear at different places within the piece, just to remind myself that this is just one chapter of your life. Something else might happen, something else happened earlier on.
Okay, very good. I was going to ask something similar to that, because I'm big on where artists place things as well as material use. So I just wanting to know a little bit more about it. So you just kind of covered that. There's another question, Schroeder, as you reflect on the differences of work on paper, sketches, and 3D assemblage, how does your creative process change? And does the painting come first and build out? Does a key or object come first?
I have to say, when I started doing the portrait sketches, that was a big leap for me. First of all, I never wanted to do portraits because in high school, I decided not to do it because I had a girlfriend who was just so good at it. I thought I couldn't compete with that, so I decided I was never going to do portraits. I got over that during my hip thing. And what it did for me was force me to pay attention to the face that I had not done in a way that I had not done in the past. So it transferred itself to the paintings, the assemblage pieces. When I'm making assemblages, I will start off with a rough thumbnail sketch just to get my head into place in terms of figuring out what the general narrative is and loosely determine what's going to be placed there. But once I start on the wood and start cutting in and putting things in, then everything else is intuitive and it goes with a flow. So it's never too predetermined. I have to work with the piece as I'm going through the process. Because I'm using power tools. I'm using wood that's 4 foot tall and 2 foot wide or 3 foot wide. And I'm using drills and saws, like a number of different types of drills and saws.
Okay. All right, very good. There was another question attached that was, does a key or object come first? I guess you talked about where that falls. That's at the end, the add-ons of the keys and the other objects. Is that towards the end of the process?
No, actually, it's part of the process because those keys are sewn into the wood.
Mm.
And some of the pieces I have to carve into the wood. So, you know, this is never one way about doing this. Sometimes he wants to go. Other times I have no idea where the key is going to end up. So I'm in the painting process and I'm doing some carving, and then I'll think, oh, a key belongs here. So then I'll start carving into the wood to insert the key.
I do have a question. I do want to ask you about
this. A lot of back and forth.
Okay, got it. I do have a question about keys because I do know of an artist who would only use used keys. Never knew. Which ones are yours?
I'll use anything. Yeah, I'll use anything. And you know, it's funny because everybody I know has got at least one key. They've had it for more than a year and they don't know what it belongs to, but they don't want to give it up. So I'm intrigued by the power of keys. What is it about the key that you just want to hold on to?
Yeah.
And I have actually people I don't even know who will send me keys. They'll give me keys.
Yeah, that was the same thing with my friends. She would have tons of keys because he would just give her, because they knew she would use she wasn't buying keys to include in her work. She would always use either old keys of hers or keys that were given to her. I do want to go back to your puppets because I'm really curious about a couple of things. One is how you come up with the names. Are those family members or just what comes to you as you're creating them in the image itself? And then the exaggeration of the features in the puppets that you're creating. There's the jaw, the cheeks, the lips are a little exaggerated. So can we talk about the images that you're presenting there? And of course, the names. And
Okay,
I love the video, by the way. I love
a couple of questions there. I will never admit that the puppets actually represent anybody from my family or anybody. I will never admit that. What I will say is the puppets are a combination of different personalities that I've experienced and just kind of put it together. The exaggerated features are, part of it is theatrical because when you're performing on a stage, those features have to be pronounced so that they show up. What I've learned or what I've experienced over the years is that people zone into the large lips, the cheekbones, and some people are offended by it. But I've decided that I'm okay with it because my puppets are never derogatory.
Right.
So I'm okay with that. And I'm also not trying to be Disney.
Right.
I was confronted by a well-meaning young lady after a puppet show once, and she says, you know, you're just destroying all of our work. I'm trying to teach our young women to be really proud of how they look. And you've just got these grotesque images. And I listened to her and I thought, did the puppet do anything that was grotesque in the performance? What did you feel about the puppet's character? What did you get from the show? And then I just had to do some deep soul searching and realize we have some issues about images.
Yes, very true.
Still, we are very sensitive about images, but my images are solid.
So let's talk about their image. Okay, now we've got a name, we've got a physical structure, but you also do some styling. So when you're thinking about one of the characters, you're also thinking about what their hair looks like, what you're going to have them on. Now, how are you doing that in sourcing materials to create a style for each one of those? And do those styles change over time?
Usually the puppet will have one outfit that stays for life because that's a part of their character. Sometimes if I'm developing a show, for example, and I know I need a particular character, then I'll start building out from what I want. It sometimes changes. For example, Smooth Earl was supposed to be a completely different character. When I started building him, what I wanted to do was an older guy, mature jazz musician. And that's not how he developed. I mean, as I got the process, Smooth Earl just appeared. So I do go with the process if I'm not developing for a particular show. Maya Opinion came about first as a concept, as a character. And I thought, I want a woman who's got opinion about everything, but nobody stays around to hear it. So that's how she evolved. And I'm not going to admit that there's anybody I know that actually looks like or sounds like Maya opinion. I'm not going to be recorded as such.
I will say they are all well developed. So I will ask you about your stories. So it's as if you're writing for a movie, that you're creating these characters and then you're building this story. So where do your stories come from?
The stories, the full out puppet shows actually have been, for the most part, museum related. Underground Railroad, Not a Subway, for example, was when I was working at Maryland Historical Society, and we were trying to introduce the concept of slavery to children. So that's how that began. There's another show called Can You Spell Harlem? And I was focusing on artists from the Harlem Renaissance. And that was a Black family. A young kid gets in trouble from rapping in school. His older sister torments him and says, "You know nothing about Harlem." He does some research and then learns about these Harlem artists, and then ends up making a rap song about the Harlem Renaissance. So those were very directed efforts for shows. Right now, I'm having fun doing puppet slams, and those are full out shows. Those are just like 5-minute sketches where a bunch of puppeteers, as I said earlier, go on stage and we perform. And that might be a song, that might be Maya opinion talking about life is good, life is not, or Smooth Earl singing about the world goes around and around, it doesn't stop, that kind of thing. And for the most part, those are more for adult audiences.
So have you had any outcomes or kids that learn something from your shows and you kind of circle back to them or run into them later after they've seen one of your shows and it's stuck? You know how there's a way to educate and that makes that learning experience stick and have some longevity. So have you had any experiences like that with children that you presented to?
Absolutely. Underground Railroad, Not a Subway has a chant that gets stuck in your head.
It does, actually.
Underground Railroad, not a subway. People travel farther, northway, walk, run, swim, travel far, follow that drinking gourd. I have more than one occasion run into an adult who saw me like in a grocery store out in public and said, "You're the puppet guy, right?" I still know that chant. I had that chant when I was in 4th grade. And this is a full-grown adult with their own kids at this point. So that has stuck in some people's brains. And I've also run into a parent who says, "Man, I don't know whether to thank you or hit you, but I can't get that song out of my head." So yeah, it stays. But what inspired me to do that was a childhood experience where I learned how to spell Mississippi by watching the cartoon and the bouncing ball. And the song MISSISSIPPI. I still know that song and I know how to spell Mississippi.
Right.
Yeah, I was just using an old tactic that storytellers use all the time.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, there's a question here. How have your travels in Africa and elsewhere affected your creative process? I will also add the travel prize location, as that affected your process too. I think you went to Brazil, so Africa.
Africa has really affected my process in terms of giving me an appreciation for material and the way that craftspeople go about making their artwork. So I'm really sensitive to that. I have not yet actually used the travel prize. I'm scheduled to do that next year because when I was going to Brazil, I had my hotel reservations, I had the chauffeurs lined up, and COVID hit. So everything got shut down. And so I'm hoping to do that next year.
Okay, very good. So, and I'll go back to the Africa theme now. I know that you were showing us some video or some footage of puppet shows in Africa. Their influence on the work that you do. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
It opened up for me just the notion of appearing with the puppets and in a different way. I've looked at African puppets. I've also looked at Japanese puppetry and Chinese puppetry. And early on, I used to perform with a stage. I was always behind a stage. But looking at those other traditions allowed me to think, I don't have to be behind a stage. I can be in full view. People won't pay attention to me if I don't compete with the puppet. So that's what the travels helped me to come to grips with. I'm just in all Black. I'm in full view. And even, for example, when Miss Lily gives a tour in the galleries, I'm in full view, but she starts off the tour and introduces herself as the tour guide. And she lets people know that Dr. Cherry is her technician. He will not take any questions during this tour. If you have any questions, direct them to me. And you have this suspense of disbelief. And it really works because people pay attention to Lily. And sometimes they're duped into it. They come off thinking, I just followed a tour with a puppet.
Here's another question. Do you find your work curating and community to be generative in the studio?
Say that again?
Do you find your work curating and in community to be generative in the studio or generative in the studio?
It's generative in the studio. You know, it's always connected. When I'm putting on the curator's hat, because I am also a maker of things, it empathizes me to the person that I'm working with in an institutional space. So I think it informs me and helps me to go about doing that work. I would say that.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about your sketches? Because I think some people on this conversation were in that book, in that sketch book. So with the sketches that you did when you were having the hip situation, will any of those become characters, you think, in puppet characters? Is that a transition that could happen, a sketch that you've done, and you kind of feel something in that character could become one of your puppets? I know you wouldn't say directly who, or that it was exactly that person, but is that possible?
I'll say a couple of things. I have gone back to the sketches and actually used the face for a painting, for an assembly. That has happened because I just came across a face that works for what I'm working on. In terms of the puppetry, that production process is so tedious and slow. That's not likely to happen as readily because puppets, the puppet stage for me in the development involves sculpting and carving and molding. So once I have a mold, I will work from the mold and then build from that. But I don't try to make specific portraits with the puppets.
Gotcha. I was thinking more just around influence, like as you're sketching someone, you develop a connection with the person. And then from that connection comes this thought about a character that could be built out in that third dimension. So there becomes this character influenced by a person that you did a sketch on.
I can't say that's happened as much. Yeah, I can't say that happened as much. What has happened with the sketches is I'm paying more attention to hair. Especially in Baltimore, hair is just a really big issue for a lot of people.
Define issue in this context.
Okay, so keep in mind that with this exercise, I'm approaching strangers.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be very careful about how I approach women as opposed to how I approach men in this, wide open environment. Women will often say, you can't take my picture because my eyes aren't on. My face on, or I don't want my hair like this. So hair is a really big issue. Guys don't have the same, typically they don't have the same issue. But women, it's easier for me to approach a woman in a setting like an art event or at church because they're dolled up. Sometimes I just want the raw look, and I can't get the raw look because no, do not take my picture with my hair looking like this.
No, that's funny. I do think that's funny. That is just, okay. All right. So Dave mentioned earlier about the transition to curation, and we know that you're quite the storyteller. You've got this fantastic body of work, and now you get to tell stories in a different kind of way. And so knowing that you're connected to the museum, you worked out in a local artist corner or an artist corner, how is it all coming together for you so that you can actually see the impacts of your body of work on what you show, and then the reach that you have for who you can actually display when you're at Gelman?
Let me say that as a curator at Gelma, I'm just coming up on my second year. So I've only been there one full year. I'm closing out on the second year. I think it's a little early to talk about long-term impact just now, but I am seeing some kind of reverberation in the community where people are talking about, oh, there's an opportunity to exhibit. On Morgan's campus, and the museum is actually supposed to be serving the campus first and foremost. Students are now coming up and saying, I kind of have a show. Most times they're not ready for a show. So what we'll do is I'll sit down and talk to them about the importance of having a portfolio, the importance of having a theme, a project, and then we can go to the next level. So that's happening already.
That's an impact.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, yeah, it's an impact.
That's definitely an impact because you're actually showing that there's possibility.
We've had one young lady who I allowed to have a show. She was not an art student. She was in media communications, but she put together a really nice show. What she learned from that experience was what goes into having an exhibit. She just thought, oh, I've got some stuff. I want to put some photographs on the wall. But when we got involved with the process of the hanging, the measuring, the making a decision, the curating, she realized that it was a bit more work. She came through like a champ and did a really nice exhibit. But afterwards, she was the one that I'm directing people to when they come up and say, can I have a show? I say, talk to this young lady. She's done an exhibit. She'll tell you what it's like to work with me. Back to me and we can talk.
I think that's quite an effort to do that because that's very informative as well as educational for people who do want to show someplace that you would be that resource for them. Much like we consider JJC to be a resource for people who really want to engage and expand the possibilities of engaging with community and artists. I think that's a wonderful experience, especially with the arts program, you being a curator and a maker and a storyteller, that's everything kind of bundled up into one. So that impact could have a very expansive reach for being right in that academic setting with artists of color.
And I have to say her opening was one of the best attended openings we had ever had with college students. They just showed up.
Right, okay, so there's another question. You taught museum students too. What do they need to know about opportunities for Black curators?
Oh, this is for museum study students specifically. First of all, you need to know that you need to carve out your own niche and just stick with it. I think that's the best advice I can give because the field is thirsty now for curators of color, but you need to come in with a purpose. You need to come in with a focus and just be very solid about that. And also be flexible. With all of that, just be flexible.
Okay, very good. Norma, you have a question?
Yeah, I thought I put it in the chat, but I didn't hear it. So
No, I don't see your name.
In your previous work that you were showing us, tell us about your use of the manual alphabet, please, Schroeder.
The sign language alphabet?
Yeah, the manual alphabet. Yeah.
That was again reflecting on my childhood experience of being in daycare with a deaf child.
Oh, interesting.
And I remember overhearing a conversation with the adults. My mother was talking to his mother and they were arguing. His mother did not want him to learn how to sign. And I didn't quite understand it at that time. But now I think the reason was she wanted him to lip read. But she didn't want him to learn to sign. She wanted him to learn to lip read.
Professionally, that has been a big issue in my profession. Yeah.
I used to sit on the steps waiting for Billy to come home from his Wednesday sessions, thinking that one day his voice box was going to be fixed. It was about the voice box.
Thank you.
There's some other, thank you, Norma, for that question. I didn't see it in the chat, but thank you for that question. One other thing I want to ask you about when it came to the objects on the pieces was you had cards and you had one that said LL Bean. So in choosing what goes on those pieces, in addition to the keys and locks, you also had some wires that were, or I think it was wire at the top of some of the pieces, and how you choose those additional components that go on the work. Can you talk a bit about that?
Okay, those are multiple questions. You got the
cards. So let's focus on the cards.
The cards just kind of came into my process when I was thinking about the game of life and dealing with the cards you're dealt.
Okay.
What do you do with the cards that you're dealt? So that's what I'm thinking subconsciously when I'm working in the studio. So I'll grab different different cards from a deck of cards, and depending on the game that you're playing, the card has a different value. If you're playing spades, it means one thing. If you're playing war, it's something else. If you play hearts, it's something else. So in life, what do you do with the cards that you're dealt? That's what they've come to mean for me. The wires also is an intuitive thing that's just kind of grown. I started using them early on, just as a part of the composition to add motion and movement. Now they're, for me, representing rods of energy.
Mm-hmm.
The piece I'm working on now, it looks more like an aura. So I'm just kind of moving with that and seeing how it goes. But in my training, I was trained as an abstract. I was always figurative, but my professors were always abstract painters. So I have to say I work figuratively with an abstract mentality.
Okay. All right.
I'm not trying to paint things as they actually look. I'm not interested in that. I'm going after an essence of a thing. And right now, adding objects helps me in that process.
Okay. All right. Very good. So I have to ask the question about where do you go now? I mean, I know you got a heavy load as a working artist, curator. I'm not sure if you're writing in there too, because I think that's also one of those spaces that can be filled by writing about work by Black people. What else does Schroeder do in his platter? I wouldn't even say what's on your plate, what's on the platter.
I'm about to pack my bags and go to Virginia and be in residence for the month of January.
Nice.
We received a fellowship for the Virginia Center for Creative Arts. So that's coming up next. Right after I curate the next show at Jelma, which is, that'll be staged in December.
Okay. Are you exploring or experimenting with any new materials, any new direction going in with the work? Or you're going to stay focused on the path you're on?
I'm going to allow to explore. I'm going to take my materials with me, but I'm going to allow myself just to explore. And for example, there's some things I want to pursue with technology, with the puppet, also with the assemblaging. So that'll be a time where I can just sit down and go to what I call YouTube University, and just play and just explore. Yes. I will be continuing with the Future Voter Series. So that was a part of my proposal for the fellowship.
Okay.
If I had a direction, what would I focus on? I said, well, yeah, I'm thinking about the Future Voter Series, and that is becoming. But the piece I'm working on now is becoming more totemic. It looks like a talisman. Direction I'm headed in at the moment.
Interesting that you see it moving. So do you see the end? Or do you just still see it evolving?
Yeah, I never try to see the end.
You never try to see the end? You either do it or you're not.
The end just kind of shows up and says, okay, you're done.
Is that right? Is that
That's
it?
what happened with the Barbershop Series.
Okay.
But people kept asking, well, how many are you going to do? And I said, well, I don't have a number in mind. I'm just going to keep going. And I got to a point where I thought, okay, it's time to do something else. And that's when the voters hit me. I was listening to the news and just got so discouraged with all this information about voter suppression. And I thought, I need to do something with this. So that's how that came about. I'm
going to ask this other question. I know you did barbershop is for the reasons you stated earlier, the reason you did not go into a beauty shop. A beauty salon, a hair salon for women. Is that why you didn't go, for the reasons you mentioned earlier? If you couldn't take a photo of a woman because her hair wasn't right?
It is very difficult for a man to salon and tell a woman that he wants to take her photograph while she's having her hair done. You can be physically hurt.
But even the parts of inspiration from actually knowing what that looks like, even if you didn't take a photo, could it be I don't want to say experimental in what a final product could look like? Or maybe it just ends up in a different form. But just thinking about your influences of the barbershop. And one other thing,
there was one barbershop where there was a female barber.
Yeah.
There was a woman in a chair, and I tried very discreetly to take a opposite side of the barbershop. And this big brother came over to me and said, I need to talk to you in the parking lot. Literally, I had to go in the parking lot, and he dressed me down.
Oh,
He put me in touch. Apparently, she called the owner of the barbershop and said, there's a guy here taking photographs. Do
oh.
about it. So I had to explain to the barber, the owner of the shop, who was not in the shop, that I had already cleared with the barber that I was taking shots of, because he was cutting my friend's hair. I was just doing that. And I had to assure him that I was not putting him in any liability. Yeah, we had that conversation in the parking lot. So I just
Oh, wow.
really careful from now.
All right. Well, I do want to say thank you so much for sharing your body of work with us. And the breadth of it is just amazing. And the characters, love them. Love it.
Thank
Even
you.
I mean, I can't believe you put chest hair on Smooth Earl. I mean, the detail that you took to put those characters together is quite fantastic. So I do love that, and I appreciate you taking the time to share your practice and your process with us, and all that you're doing at the James E. Lewis Museum over at Morgan State University. I thank you for that. I thank you for the partnership that we formed to try to keep the connection to the great work that happens there, and what you're doing in the arts community. And all the best to you in this residency. And we'll see who comes out. It might be Miss Lily might get a mate.
Yeah,
You know?
she's had several husbands already.
Yes, she has some- Oh, it looks like Norma has another finger up question. You're on mute, Norma. Norma, you're on mute.
Okay. Just wanted to remind you, Schroeder, that Olitha Devane has a bag of keys for you, and you can give the big container of buttons to her.
Oh, I've already started using those buttons.
Have you? I thought that was not your thing. Great.
No, no, and you will see that. You will see it soon.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. Well, she owes you the bag of keys because she said she's going to give them to you. So,
I will follow up. Thank you.
okay.
Well, thank you so much again, Schroeder, and everyone for your time this evening. Jean, do I need to throw it back to you to say thank you very much all for your time this evening, and hopefully you can check the Joshua Johnson Council out and all the great things that we do to bring artists to your door.
Thank you.
I thank you all and have a
Bye-bye.
wonderful evening. Good night.